So I'm just sitting here relaxing, waiting to make a delivery, watching YouTube, learning, and I stumble across some old videos about when Amazon walked away from building its campus in New York City. And what's her name there? AOC. I forget her full name. Everybody just calls her AOC. I don't agree with her on a lot of stuff. And I'm not even sure I completely agree with her about her political motivations for that fight. But I do agree with the outcome of them not getting the subsidies, Amazon. Because everybody keeps liking to say how we live in a free market. And we really don't. Because part of the reason why we are where we are is because of this whole rigging of the economy with these subsidies. I mean, I'm not against people being rich. And I don't even think they should be taxed differently than the rest of us. I mean, it's nothing like that. But subsidies and tax loopholes are not free market standards. They're just not. It goes against everything that a free market stands for, because what it does is it's rigging the game, and the people making these subsidies are picking the winners and losers by choosing who they're going to give these subsidies to. For example, I mean, I'm hard on Walmart. I'm even hard on Amazon. I shop a lot on Amazon, but I'm still hard on Amazon. I'm hard on all of them. GE, any of these companies that are getting these big major tax breaks and subsidies and all that, because Walmart is a grocery store, and it's also a what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a textile store. I mean, it has different things in it. I guess textile would be a good way to use. Good word to use. I mean, it has clothing. It has sporting goods. It's a goods store. Now, if over here you have Walmart and they want to come into Arlington, Texas, and then over here you have Harry and Jane, and they want to open a grocery store / goods store in Arlington, Texas. Well, when Harry and Jane go to Arlington, Texas to open their store, they can't get millions of dollars in tax breaks, and they can't get millions of dollars in subsidies. But Walmart can. And what's the difference between Walmart and Harry and Jane? If we live in a free market system where everybody has the same right to succeed or fail, what is the difference between the two of them? I mean, in all honesty, other than the fact that Walmart has the money to buy off people and Harry and Jane don't, there really is no difference between them. Yeah, sure, Walmart is a multi-international chain. Big deal. Who's to say Harry and Jane can't become a multi-international chain? Maybe they want to open up a store called HJ's. And HJ's might be the next international retailer. The problem with these excessive tax loopholes and all these subsidies is the only people that win are the people that can afford to buy these tax subsidies and loopholes. Which means we don't live in a free market system then. We live in a rigged market. And since government's the one creating these tax loopholes and these tax subsidies, then the government is the one controlling business. Which, it's not to the same extreme, but it's the same fascist economical business model that the Nazis, Hitler was using. I mean, yeah, it's not as extreme, but it's the same model. It's still the same system. And we all agree that, there's nothing good about the Nazis, but yet we're going to embrace their market system. Oh, why? Because it's for the better good? Then why don't we just start rounding up homeless people and doing experiments on them? It's for the greater good. Why don't we just start killing people with autism that are going to have to be taken care of for the rest of their life? It's for the greater good. So you see, this whole argument that some people try to make that tax subsidies and tax loopholes are for the greater good there's no logic behind it. Because you can argue anything is for the greater good. Abortions are for the greater good. You can argue abortions are for the greater good. Abortions, by allowing people to have abortions, if you're anti-abortion, you have to accept that abortions are for the greater good. If you accept that tax subsidies and tax loopholes are for the greater good. Because abortions means that there's a less chance of a greater burden on the welfare system. It's for the greater good. I'm personally pro-life, but if we're going to use this argument, it's for the greater good. So, when you're someone who says you embrace the free market and then you're going to go support tax subsidies and tax loopholes, and you're going to say that the government should come in and say that Walmart, with its grocery store and goods store, somehow takes priority over Harry and Jane's mom and pop grocery store and goods store. Which, by the way, the store could be just as big as the Walmart Supercenter. Who's to say that they're not going to make it just as big as the Walmart Supercenter? So it could still bring in just as many jobs as the Walmart Supercenter would bring in. So who's to say that for some reason Walmart should get special treatment? And the same with Amazon. I mean, if Amazon really felt they could succeed in New York City, then why'd they walk away when they couldn't get the tax subsidies? If they really believed that they had a winning business model for New York City and that their business model could be successful in New York City, why did they walk away from the subsidies? Now, some people will argue, well, it's a publicly traded company and the shareholders intervened. Well, if the shareholders believed that they had this great business model that was going to make all this billions of dollars, why did they allow Amazon to walk away from New York City? It really comes down to the point that you have to accept the fact that without the subsidies and without the loopholes, these companies must not be able to succeed. I mean, they're kind of saying it. Their shareholders are saying it, and that's why I'm anti-subsidy. I have no problem with people being rich. I said people should be able to make all the money that they want to make. I am in no way against people being rich. If you want to be a cold-hearted rich person, that's your right. We live in America. We're a country of individuals. You're allowed to be an asshole in America. You're allowed to be a saint in America. You're allowed to be everything in between in America. But it should all be on the same playing field. It should all be on the same level playing field. Because the free market, that's what the free market is about. The free market is about someone going and investing and becoming a winner. And if you need government to intervene so that you can continue to be a winner, then there's something wrong with your business model. Now, right now, because of the way the system is set up, obviously, anything that anybody sets up, they got to take advantage of every tax loophole that they can get and every tax subsidy they can get to compete with these bigger companies, because these bigger companies are building their success off the backs of the other taxpayers as well, including the taxpayer who's trying to build up their own business. And there's no, people try, they really do it. They however they spin it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to one simple fact. It's not a free market system if you're playing in a rigged game. The free market is not rigged. What we live in is not a free market system because it is rigged. And we can't change it until we put people in that will change it. Now, some of the people I don't necessarily agree with. Like, I definitely don't agree with Bernie Sanders, and I don't agree with AOC, whatever her name is. AOC, they all call her AOC. And I don't agree with pretty much most politicians, because they do. They put their pockets, most politicians put their pockets before the greater good of society. And it's them same politicians, some of them conservatives, some of them progressives, Republicans and Democrats. Very few are liberals, mostly Republicans and Democrats. And they believe in a rigged system. You know, if we got rid of all these tax subsidies, because everybody talks about tax rates and they complain about the tax rates. But think about it. If you got rid of all the subsidies and you got rid of all the tax loopholes, then realistically, it's hard for anybody to argue about bringing down tax rates. But at least then, all the corporations will be paying the taxes that they owe. All, you know, we can fix the system so that they can't go and hide the money out abroad overseas as easily. Right now, the whole system, the way the regulations are made, it's all rigged to allow these things to happen. And the government is allowing these things to happen. The government is the reason these things are happening. I mean, even home ownership, I've pointed that out, how because of government regulation and the burdens that government regulation costs, you can't get a mortgage for a $25,000 house. You have to go get a $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 house. I mean, you can find them for, closer to 50, but they're hard to find them low mortgages like that, but you can't get a mortgage for under 50. It's next to impossible to get a mortgage for under $50,000. The whole system is rigged against the little guy. And like I said, I don't have a problem with people being rich. You should be allowed to make all the money you want. This is America. That's what it's the land of the free, and it's the land of opportunity. But we're no longer the land of opportunity. We want to be the land of opportunity, but we're not the land of opportunity, not with a rigged system the way we have. And even the whole reason why so many people are embracing this socialist concept. I mean, there's some ideas that are good. There are some ideas that are good. But socialism overall isn't good. But it doesn't mean that, we can't find good ideas in there and use them. Like I said, like the UBI. I mean, I think overall for the American economy, if we fix all these tax loopholes and we fix all these tax subsidies and we make it a fair, even playing ground again so that winners can be winners by their actual hard work and not rigging the system so that other people can't compete with them, then the UBI, we can afford to pay for the UBI. And that would actually in itself create tax revenue. Most of that money would come right back in. Most of that money would go right back into the tax folds because it's going to go into the economy. I mean, think about it. The average, someone like Bill Gates, is he going to use his $1,000 a month? Is it really going to make an impact? No. But for most working Americans, it is going to make an impact, even if it's only paying bills. Even if it's only just paying the basic bills. By paying the bills, that money is going back into the economy. And that money is going to generate growth in the economy. But right now, because the way the system is rigged, I don't think we could even use that money, because then the little guy still can't use that money to be part of the competition in the free market. Because eventually everybody's going to get their bills caught up. I mean, homeless people would be able to get off the streets. They would start renting homes. Some of them would actually get back to work. Some of them would wind up creating businesses. There's an argument that if you give people $1,000 a month, drug addicts are all going to go and all of a sudden all over D overnight. To be fair, yeah, some people might. But overall, I have a feeling that a lot of them, just because of the fact that they're not such a degraded part of society anymore, that, they probably, NA would work for them then, because they actually have hope. I mean, most drug addicts, the problem with most drug addicts is when they talk about trying to help drug addicts, you have to be able to give the drug addict hope before you can help the drug addict. There's no help for somebody who has no hope. There really isn't. You can't help somebody who has no hope, because there's no hope. You need hope in order for a system to work for you that's going to help you recover from drug addiction. Because that's a big part of the problem with drug addiction is you use the drug addiction when you're high, you're escaping the hopelessness. So, it's an illogical argument when people say we can't give people money because they're going to go out and OD. I got news for you. There's people that had never touched a drug in their life. They hit the lottery and then they go out and they coke themselves to death within a week. It's just all of a sudden they're superstars and they go out and they meet these people and they become the big party and they want to party and they rock and party like a rock and roll star. They kill themselves. Might have never touched a drug a day in their lives. Then they hit the lottery and they kill themselves within a week. It happens. So are we supposed to now, if someone wins the lottery, say, well, we have to first evaluate you to see if we can give you this money because you might go and live like a rock star now all of a sudden and kill yourself? It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous argument. I mean, I understand the moral merit behind it. I'm not saying that there's not a moral merit to the argument, but at the end of the day, it's still a ridiculous argument because it's what we call a false truth. Because the majority of drug addicts aren't going to kill themselves. The majority of them won't. And it's the same with business. If you take away the tax subsidies and the tax loopholes and you bring the tax rate down to a reasonable level, the majority of the businesses aren't going to flee the country. The majority of the businesses aren't going to fail. The ones that are using where the only reason they are succeeding is because the game is rigged in their favor, yeah, they're going to fail, but that's not a bad thing. They don't deserve to succeed if the only way that they can win is by playing on a rigged football field. I mean, how many people out there aren't Patriot fans because of Footballgate? We don't like rigged games. It's not an American value. It goes against everything that American values believe in. I mean, I'm not a football fan, but I'll tell you what, Tim Tebow, I loved Tim Tebow. Whenever I heard Tim Tebow talk, I loved that guy. I mean, he was an inspiration. And Peyton Manning, another one, an inspiration. What's his name there? I can't even remember his name now from the Patriots. Yeah, he's such an inspiration, I can't even remember his name. I remember Footballgate, though. And that's what gets lost in this whole conversation. And then you get these people that really do. I mean, if they didn't have a nefarious plan in mind, they wouldn't be demonizing the rich. They would be demonizing the rigged system. That's fair. It totally is. They should be demonizing the rigged system. But when people are demonizing people being wealthy, then you have to question what their real motives are. Because you can't walk down the street and go, hey, you want to be poor? And someone's going to say, yeah, man, I want to be poor. Hell yeah, I want to be poor. It's just not going to happen. I mean, is everybody going to say that they want to be super rich and have 10 G5s and a fleet of Bentleys and $20 million compound in every state of the country? No, of course not. But most people want to be rich. They don't want to be beyond the reaches of reality rich. They just want to be rich. They want to know that they don't have to worry about paying their bills. They want to know that if they go into if they like the new Corvette that just came out, they could go and buy the new Corvette. Or someone like me, I can go buy an Aston Martin or go buy a BMW. Or I can just take my Integra into any shop and get it fixed and get it restored and have it look the way that I really want it to look. and have it run right again and all this. That's what people want. That's what most people want. But most people, to do that, they understand that you need to be rich to some extent. You don't have to be filthy rich, but you do need to be rich. You need to be rich enough where you don't have to stress them bills. So there's nobody in America that truly does not want to be rich. So demonizing the rich, I mean, you have to question the motives of people behind that. But then you have to question the motives of the people behind supporting the rigged system too. If they're supporting the rigged system, you have to question their motives too. Because if this country was founded on, one of our founding principles is the free market. And if we can't get, if your politician is arguing against free market principles by saying, oh, we need to make more tax loopholes and we need to make more tax subsidies, you really need to question their motives. But then, like I said, same thing with the other politicians that are demonizing wealth creation. You have to question their motives too. The middle ground is when you get somebody up there that says, you know what, wealth is a good thing, greed is a bad thing. That's the kind of person that we need leading. And those are the kind of people that we need to elect in. That's why I loved Andrew Yang. Because, Andrew Yang, I mean, you can tell by the things that he talked about. Even, a lot of people talk about how they loved his stance on the environment and cleaning and climate change and this and that. What they apparently didn't catch was that he was realistic in understanding that we need to take a plan forward, which is a plan that I would support. I mean, I have nothing against cleaner technology. I tell people all the time, yeah, I want a 67 Plymouth GTX getting 3 miles to the gallon and just tearing up the highway and burning fossil fuels like there's no tomorrow. But it doesn't mean that when I go into the car lot to buy a brand new car that I don't want the cleanest, best fuel economic technology possible. Even if it's a high-powered car, I still want it to be as clean burning and using the best technology possible to make that car the cleanest, most fuel-efficient car possible, even if it's getting 700 horses. I have nothing against people who want to buy a Prius. I mean, people, it's America. You want to buy a Prius? Go buy a Prius. You want to go buy a Nissan Leaf? Go buy a Nissan Leaf. All the more power to you. You want to go buy a Tesla? Hey, all the more power to you. I love coal miners. Had to make that jab. That's another thing. I grew up in a time when and we're kind of reverting back to that now, but I grew up in a time when we idolized the coal miners, and we idolized the truck drivers like myself, and we idolized the farmer, and we idolized the steel worker and even the plumber. Yeah, we cracked jokes about the plumber, but at the same time, we respected the fact of we respected hard workers. Then we fell into this trap that you had to idolize bankers and lawyers and Wall Street and investors, and you couldn't, if you were a hard worker, somehow that was degrading. And now look where we are today. I mean, in all honesty, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a banker. You want, or being an investor. It's just the whole rigged game is the real problem in America. That is our problem. It's the rigged game. And nobody wants to sit back and look at the way that the game is rigged. Even welfare. Look at the welfare trap. I mean, being a liberal in this country is not easy. I get I get bashed all the time because I talk about all the mistakes that progressives have made, and I don't look at Johnson as some kind of hero. The Johnson welfare program is a horrible welfare program. I have no qualm saying it. Most progressive programs are horrible, and I have no problem saying that. And the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, they they just the hate that they throw at me. And the irony is, as much as people like to bash conservatives, when I talk about all the flaws of conservatives, it's very rare that somebody says anything about me bashing a conservative mishap like the Patriot Act, one of the most unpatriotic bills ever, or Nixon's failure at putting the brakes on the police state that was coming into play that Johnson put in place. Johnson did that too. Johnson is the one that developed the SWAT program. Nixon gets the credit for it, but Johnson is the one that actually did it. And that's what started our whole police state and the militarization of the police. And then conservatives messed up in the 80s. It was a knee-jerk reaction to a bunch of criminals, because all of a sudden we had this criminals going out and ambushing police officers. And then the conservatives all went and they made where they advanced even further yet SWAT from the militarization of the police through the SWAT program to the militarization of the police force in general. And the reasonings behind it, yeah, they were understandable, but nobody looked ahead to see, well, how could this go wrong? I mean, it's easy to say that now in hindsight, but still, nobody looked at how that could go wrong. We don't have any cops that walk the streets anymore. You don't have neighborhood cops anymore. And you don't have cops that... I don't want to say that way because that's going to come out wrong. Most cops are good, but the problem is that their training is really bad. There's some cops, yeah, you can go on YouTube and you can see there's plenty of bad cops out there, but they're not the majority of cops. But at the same time, the training, it makes even good cops do stupid things. And it's because they're trained to look at me and you as the enemy. I mean, the best example of that point is, what was the name of that movie? The Siege. Watch the movie The Siege. Bruce Willis says that. He says the last thing you want is the U.S. Army patrolling the streets. And the reason why is because the military is taught to look at the people as the enemy. Now, granted, most of the military does not look at Americans as the enemy, but they look at, when they're in a combat situation, they look at whoever they're dealing with as the enemy. And unfortunately, that can bleed over into, on the American side, Kent State, Ohio. Everybody knows about Kent State, Ohio. Neil Young even sang a song about it. And that's what happened. When you bring in the military, that's what they're trained to do. They're trained to look at the people as the enemy. And so when you're militarizing the police force, you're training them to look at the public as the enemy. It's the police training that's bad on that end. And all these things all come back to the government, though. It's the government that does all these things. Now, like I said, some things are done with the best intentions, but very poor foresight. And now, with the hindsight, they don't want to fix it. Because the only way they can fix it is to admit that they made a mistake. And they will not admit that they made the mistake. And so they will not go and fix these things. And they're easy, most things are easy to fix. Like I said, just whether it's taxes, the police, the whole college loan debacle. I mean, the list goes on. There are easy solutions to all these things to fix them. But in order to fix these things and put these simple things in place to fix them, we first need to get people in there that are willing to say the government screwed up. I know, it's hard to do. It's hard to say. I screwed up. I know. I'm guilty of it too myself sometimes. There's times where I screw up. I mean, recently I was in the car with my girlfriend and I made a really stupid comment about my birthday, and as soon as I said it, I knew I screwed up, and I even said it. I said, that came out wrong. Because I knew I screwed up. But I admitted I was wrong, because it just came out wrong. It didn't come out the way I meant it. It sounded completely different than the way I meant it. It did not sound at all. It was what I meant. But it's hard for people to admit they screwed up. But that's what we need. Since we can't get the politicians that made these mistakes to admit it, we need to get politicians in there that will fix it. And they will say, yeah, the government screwed up. We're here to fix it. But again, we need to look at the people that we're going to put in there. Because if they're demonizing becoming wealthy, you don't want someone like that leading you, because that means they don't want you to become wealthy. They don't want you to become the next Jay-Z. They don't want you to become the next Peyton Manning. They don't want you to become the next Bill Gates. They don't want you to become the next Obama. They don't want you to become the next Hillary Clinton. They don't want you to become the next Trump. They don't want you to become the next Reagan. If they're demonizing the rich, that's what they want. They do not want you to become the things that you look up to. But then on the other side, like I said, if they're supporting the rigged system and poor policies and horrible regulation and destructive laws, then they're not looking out for you either. It's really that simple. So we need to make changes, and we need to put people in government that are going to look out for us, and not just us as an individual, us as a whole, because we are a nation of individuals. But they need to look out for us as a whole. And if they're not going to look out for this nation as a whole, then they're not looking out for you or me.